I think I gravitated and grasped on, okay, what new technical skill can I learn and make myself better so I can market myself out there. I had never thought about taking a step back and saying, hey, it starts here
Yeah.
inside of me.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to the Career Therapy Podcast. My name is Martin McGovern, your host, and today we are welcoming Valerie Mecki to the show. She is a job seeker who is doing a lot of amazing things when it comes to technology, networking, social media, and I wanted to bring her on to get her insights into how to navigate the more social side of the job search. So stick around for the episode, and without further ado, here's Valerie. I just kind of want to kick things off by asking you, what has the job search been like for you this time around that maybe is different
Hmm.
than it was for you in years past?
This time around, I was let go during the pandemic. And that was a complete shock for me. Um, I thought I was a part of the essential team. And then I got that phone call.
And what were you
I
doing at the
still
time?
remember it. I was a domestic sourcing buyer. I worked for a uniform company that does branded material, branded clothing and product. I know that the company was hurting because half of the accounts was in restaurants, and at the time, all the restaurants were closing down,
Oh, wow.
and then
Yeah.
the other half was groceries. So it was just this crazy, you know, difference between businesses closing and businesses on fire. So I just, we worked so hard to keep the grocery store chains to whatever they needed. But when I got that phone call, it really was a shock um, that that they would let me go. Um, so that happened, and what has been difficult during this time is you are dealing with not having health care during a pandemic. That was a big part. Um, will I ever find a job during this time because all the other businesses are closing? So you're just dealing with all these assumptions. Some to be true because there was a time where no one was posting anything new, especially coming from a garment or manufacturing,
Mm.
industry. I think companies were being very cautious. So that was very difficult in navigating, and it could do a number on your mindset for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that mindset piece is really the core of the job search, right? There's a billion tactics
Yeah.
out there and everyone's yelling about different tactics, but really
Yeah.
getting your mind into the right place, that's almost the hardest part of the whole thing. And so what has that sort of mental journey been like for you over the time that you've been searching?
Well, I would say I love learning. So, but I find my learning in a way of I want to learn how to, you know, um, do content writing or learn more about SEO, things that are very more like I can grab them from Google and learn about it. But the whole mindset transferring, it seemed so like a little woo-woo to me. Like
Hmm.
I didn't know the tactical way of doing it. And I think I'm just starting to figure that out and learn and listen from people. But that has been a little bit slower start for me. I think I gravitated and grasped on, okay, what new technical skill can I learn and make myself better so I can market myself out there. I had never thought about taking a step back and saying, hey, it starts here
Yeah.
inside of me and my mind of how I can sell myself. And that's just starting now. But
Has there been a tactic that you've come across? Like everyone has their own way of doing it, and I like that you called out the woo woo side of things,
yeah,
right? Like I'm definitely in
yeah,
the woo woo industry. I'm a coach, right? And so yeah, there's times where I'm rolling my eyes to the back of my head, but at the same time, everyone has their own style, and I want to always respect that.
yeah.
And like some people need that woo, and some people need that practical. It sounds like you're much more on like the practical side, but how have you
Practical,
found
yeah.
how have you found the practical side of mindset working out? Because I do find that that's a little bit harder for people to sort of sink their teeth into.
For me, it's been about when I write down content or post, it all comes back to me. Like, what are my thoughts? So in a way, it's kind of like journaling it, and just vetting that out through my thoughts and writing it down.
Nice.
That
Yeah.
has been really helpful.
Yeah, I think I started in that exact same spot back in the day is journaling and getting the thoughts on the paper, because then you can analyze it the way that your
Uh-huh.
analytical brain wants to, right? And so
Uh-huh.
that's really
Yeah.
great. And when you were
But you know what,
getting,
Martin?
yeah,
Sorry, I
jump
don't
in.
like I never I never was labeled from my family as the good writer. So my sister was the academic, my brother was the superstar, like sports star. I was the creative one, right?
Mm-hmm.
I drew, I like made things, and I never had been told I was a good writer. But I just figured it's to myself, I'm just going to write this down. And that has been, I don't know, it's given me a confidence of boost too, knowing that I could be a good writer. So that's been interesting too.
Yeah. Well, there's the good or bad, right? I find that to be really
Yeah.
interesting. The moral values that we put on everything that we do when we're job searching or building our career or different things like that. And
Hmm.
it,
Yeah.
it's something that I'm digging into a lot lately, because people will have hobbies that they beat themselves up over because they're not doing it right, or doing it perfectly, or doing it well. And I find that the same thing goes with the job search. People are like, well, I met this person and I didn't get the job, so that didn't work. I failed. And there's so much nuance in learning how to do something rather than just
Hmm.
doing it right or doing it wrong. I
Hmm.
find that doing it quote unquote wrong is a pretty big spectrum with a lot of other values in it. So you could do something wrong and still learn a ton. You could do something wrong and still get a different outcome that you just weren't expecting. I'm doing my live stream quote unquote wrong because I'm not caring about how many people watch it, but the value that I get personally from it is huge. So I'm kind
Hmm.
of curious, like, you were told early on that, or maybe kind of inferred early on, that you're not like the strong
Yeah.
writer in your family,
Right.
but that's all just contextual, right? It's like, so what, we shouldn't write because we're not the best at
Right.
writing? We shouldn't
Right.
like, it's like, oh, I'm not a world-class dancer. Should I never like bounce to a beat? Like, this is
Right.
ridiculous.
Get on the dance floor and get out there. Yeah, I completely agree. And those are the things that when you are let go, right? Because it's not at your own will, your company saying, thank you, but we can't, have you on any longer. That comes up. All these things come up for you. Are you good? Are you bad at? Um, but I think just for me, it was just maybe it was proving myself like I can, but it was only to myself writing things down. Hey, that doesn't sound so bad. Hey, that does make sense.
And how long did you
So
need to
that
do that before you got the confidence to start posting stuff publicly?
I would say it took a while, at least 3 months for me to post things specifically on LinkedIn. I think, listen, you're looking for a job, you have to be present on LinkedIn. And that was the most scariest thing for me. When you post something on Instagram, when you post something on Facebook, you feel pretty protected and safe because it's people that you're showing your personality. But on LinkedIn, in my mind, in the beginning, you have to have this professional outlook. How are they going to perceive me out? Like, it was really hard to make those first posts. But it wasn't until I started being vulnerable in my posts and sharing what this layoff journey and job searching was until I really started getting actual engagement from people. So then when I started to see that, like, it was actually making a difference in someone's day, or people were like, yes, I totally understand. I've been there before. It really gave me the permission to, okay, keep sharing your story because it's helping someone out there, because
Mhm.
I'm just one of 2 million women who are out there who had to be forced out of the job workforce because of the pandemic.
And what were some of the things that people resonated with the most when you started posting?
It was all about like the job journey in terms of, well, there was this one post I had to turn down this job, well, the second round of a job interview because the hiring manager was completely distracted, and didn't listen to a word I said. And I had been practicing and getting ready for the interview, but she showed up late. She wasn't listening. You can hear the water, pouring in the background, and I was so upset with it. Um, so I shared it on LinkedIn,
Yeah.
and that actually was the I had 25,000 views on that one post.
Wow.
And I think what resonated was, yes, I've been there before. I've been not seen or heard, whether it was in the hiring process, the job interview. I think that's what resonated with people, is that people tend to forget when you are busy and you're in a leadership role or a hiring role, you get so consumed, you're not even thinking about the person who's on the other side. And I think I probably hit a nerve on both ends.
What sort of things are people saying in the comments?
They were saying, you're going to find the right company. I had this happen to me. So it was awesome to connect with people I didn't even know.
Hmm. Yeah, well, I appreciate you sharing that kind of stuff because I do feel like there's a level of like, everything needs to be going perfectly all the time
Yeah.
for people to feel
Yeah.
good. And the truth is that nothing is perfect, especially the companies that are doing the hiring. I think one of the most viewed posts that I've put up recently was one where I was like, the job you're applying to is, it probably sucks. It's not as
Hmm.
great as, as it seems. And
Yeah.
these are the things that I think resonate because we're sort of sold a bill of goods that, everything should be perfect. Everything should work out. If you're doing it, if you're hustling right, then you'll be a millionaire overnight. And this message is so over the top and it's so consuming that it tends to stress people out to the point of paralysis, of doing nothing. And to be able to take that moment and be like, well, nope, this company's not being respectful. I'm going to bow out. Having that confidence, having that ability to take ownership, I think is huge. And I also take the approach of like, trying to make things into a joke. I find that to be quite helpful as a defense mechanism throughout the job search. Where, if someone shows up and they're flustered and they're not ready to interview me, I try to be like, well, I guess they're having a bad day, or they maybe got stuck on the toilet or something. I'll come up with something hilarious to make myself laugh a little bit, rather than getting upset. Which I think there's like two feelings in the job search: elated
Yes.
happiness or absolute misery. And that bounce back and forth, that ping pong back and forth, I think is what drives people nuts, when in
Yes.
reality it's a lot of just mundane, and then a lot of like kind of excitement and like maybe some letdowns, and it can be much smoother if we just look at the full picture.
Yeah. And there's a lot of blaming yourself too,
Yeah.
as the person who is interviewing for that job, because you put the company or you put that hiring manager, that role, on such a pedestal.
Yeah, the pedestal thing. I mean, it's these weird parallels to the dating world, right? Like if you put someone on a pedestal, you're just setting yourself up for real disappointment in whatever that interaction is going to be. And so, um, as
Yeah.
you started, journaling and going through this process of, contending with your thoughts on a day-to-day basis, what were some of the trends that you noticed about how you were thinking about the job search? What were some of the mindfulness realizations that came up?
Well, there was one exercise, I say this exercise because I'm, that nerdy type. There
Mm-hmm.
was one journal entry where I had to write down all of the experiences that I've had. And this was about 2 months ago. So I'm like, I've been laid off already at that point, probably at 4 or 5 months at that point still. Um, and because you're going through this process of putting yourself out there and not receiving any, sometimes you're getting ghosted by, by hiring managers or recruiters. You never hear back. So it really puts you in this mindset of like, um, hello, is anyone hearing? I don't understand. Maybe I'm not giving the value. But one of the best journal entries that I put was like, I had to write down everything that I accomplished in previously, and remind myself that I used to lead teams. I was excellent at being a product developer. So that was really helpful because I think you need to take inventory sometimes and remind yourself that you are you are very valuable. You just got to find the right company who sees that.
Yeah, that's fantastic because the farther we get from everything, and maybe this is even in the moment. I
Hmm.
know in the moment I have a hard time celebrating things that are good, right? And very often, someone I'm working with gets a job, and the next thought I have is, okay, who doesn't have the job? Like I'll forget to even celebrate, right? I'll be like, good for you, and then
Yeah.
I'll just turn my head to the next person. I'll be like, one less person to think about. But there is this sort of overemphasis on the negative, especially because that's kind of how work is set up, right? If you've ever go to your year-end review or anything, they're like, here's all the things that you need to work on. Or you take a personality test, it's like, here's where you're not so great. And it also
Yeah.
says where you're great, but that tends not to be where we focus. We focus on where we're not so great. And so that's a really cool exercise to go back and really identify all the things that you've done
Hmm.
positive. And that's also great prep for interviews as well, in order to have all your stories top of mind, ready to go, rather than trying to
Yeah,
search that memory bank while you're under pressure and nervous.
it's true. Yeah.
And so, as you worked through these emotions and you started to get more confident,
Yeah.
was there something that pushed you to start posting online and to start putting yourself out there and building a brand for yourself?
Oh man, when you say build a brand for yourself, that is something I'm still trying to figure out. Am I really? I think let me rephrase that. I'm working on it, and
Hmm.
I think I am building towards something. Um, yeah, I think that employers want to see different side of you, so building your own personal brand is super important. Um, so for me, it all got kickstarted at the end of 2020 and entering into 2021. And my word for 2020 was resilience, right? Like I was laid off, but we're doing okay. My family is safe, they're healthy, financially we're okay. So for me, it allowed me to be just to survive. But in 2021, I came up with a new word for me, which was execution. So taking that power of resilience, what am I going to do with it now? I can't just let it sit there. So I just started to think, okay, well, let's start executing. Let's start really taking what you have been practicing in your head or journaling and put it out there and see what happens. So it really started with like a simple find a word phrase and go for it in 2021.
That's awesome. I always love setting those single word phrases for the year. That's such a great exercise.
What's
And
yours?
so last year it was consistency,
Mm,
and that's where I started doing the daily live stream. And then this year it's practice, trying to take the pressure off the outcomes and just focus on the daily routine and habit and things like that. So bringing a sort of try to approaching what I'm trying to do is approach everything I do in a long-term sustainable way rather than in
mm-hmm.
short sprints, which is kind of how I've done it in the past. I'll go so hard that I burn out and then I won't want to do that activity anymore. Versus what I'm trying to be like is, wait, how can you actually find the fun way or healthy way or positive way to do this that'll last for a decade? Um,
Mm-hmm.
and it's
Because
been
what you're doing is building for long term.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
that's, I think a lot of people get stressed out about their personal brands. And I kind of saw it in your face when I brought up the word, where it's like, oh, am I building a personal brand or am I doing something else here? And in my
Yeah.
mind, I always like that the way of describing a personal brand is just your reputation. Like, are you being mindful about the way you present yourself in order to build a reputation in your field? And that, I think, again, takes a little bit of the pressure off versus what I think most people think when they think personal brand is, oh, I need a logo. Oh, I need a website. Oh, I need to be this kind of person doing this kind of thing. And then I
Mhm.
pigeonhole myself. Like, I even had that thought last week or whenever I posted that thing. Someone's like, oh, I like your more cynical voice in this post. And my
Mhm.
marketing brain goes, be more cynical always in every conversation. And like
Yeah.
now become the brand. And that's where I think people get into dangerous territory, because then they become sort of a parody of themselves in a way, versus just
Mm.
being yourself, which is going to be sometimes cynical, sometimes positive,
Yeah.
sometimes negative, sometimes whatever, and allowing that evolution and that through line to be seen by people as you go. And so, as you've been thinking about what you're putting up,
Mhm.
it's really hard to choose where to where to censor and where to be authentic. And I think that that's a really interesting piece in there too, where
Mhm.
everyone, there's a whole, not everyone, but there's a whole part of the internet that's like, just bring your full self to work, just be authentic. And then there's the old
Mhm.
joke. It's like, yeah, but what if you're an a-hole, right? Like, if you bring your authenticity in that way. But where do you feel like you're at with your sort of professionalism, authenticity, what don't you talk about kind of stuff? I mean, obviously don't tell us what you don't talk about because
Mhm.
you wouldn't talk about it. But what are some of like the things that go through your head when you are posting that are either helpful in posting or getting in the way of you hitting?
I find that my best post really is when I share what I'm going through the most. So when I'm writing those posts, I'm like, delete, delete, delete when it sounds too perfect. When I'm sounding too like I'm giving you a tip and it's not, it's just really coming from my own experience. So I find that to be authentic, yes, it has to come from the heart. I think that's what when content resonates on people, but just try not to make it sound as if you're a teacher, an expert in that, because we're not, right? We're just living
Mm-hmm.
this life all through experience. And that's what I'm trying to share is more through my own experience rather than I have the answers for everything.
Yeah, I appreciate that, because
Yeah.
there's a specific influencer that wannabe influencer. I wouldn't even call him an influencer, but there's someone I know who's trying to be an influencer out in California, and they definitely take that other tone that you're talking about, and it is cringy to say the least, and kind of sad to, to put it in other words. But
Yeah, you have to stop yourself and be like,
yeah,
is this a value for them or a value for me?
yeah, and I don't think people get that. I think a lot of people just see, oh, I need to be successful. And that's kind of what I was calling out before we hopped on the call, where, I was listening to someone talking about morning routines, and they talk about it as though you're literally going to change every aspect of your life and be a totally different person just by waking up an hour
Hmm.
early. And I'm like, I've done that. I can wake up an hour early. I'm still me in that hour of
Yeah,
the morning. Like, I'm still me. And that, I think, is such an important thing to remember, is like it's almost like everyone is trying to sell you on being not yourself. Like, go be this person or go be that person or go be Michael Jordan, right? It's like, at what point do we stop and just say, wait, I got to listen to what the hell's going on in my head?
yeah,
I got to start listening to, when I'm resisting something, is it because I'm failing at living up to this ideal that some person on the internet told me to live up to, or is it because I don't actually want to do that thing and I need to look at
right.
what I actually want to do?
Yeah, and no one really talks about the scrapes in your knees or the fall downs or your mental unpacking that went to that. Everyone wants to like fast forward to the good parts. And
Yeah.
that's that is
Yeah,
not true.
this person woke up an hour early, then ran ultra marathons, then 2x their income in 6 months. That's what they said.
Wow.
And
Just by waking up
I'm
early.
like, just by waking up early. Oh, and by his morning method. That's what he wanted
Oh,
you to
right.
do at the end of it, of course. And so I'm like,
Right.
I'm sorry, but like there is definitely a lie somewhere in that sales pitch. and and I'm not saying all of it is, but there's definitely something that is not replicable in that sales pitch. But anyway, back
Yeah.
to all these different things that are out there that we could do. I think you have to find the
Yeah.
space that works for you. And I know you've been really big on Clubhouse lately, and it's a brand new
Yeah.
app. So if you haven't heard of it, I'm going to let Valerie take it away, because I'm curious, like, how did you find this? Why were you so interested in it? There's so many new things that you can get involved in online. There's new
Yeah.
apps every day, but what is it about this one that's getting you so excited?
Clubhouse, I learned about it through LinkedIn. I follow a couple of people on LinkedIn that were doing LinkedIn live interviews, and between the both of them, it was like an investor, a VC investor, and a host. She does her own like entrepreneur type of courses. They were talking about Clubhouse. And so actually that was like the second time I had heard it. The day before I saw it in a post. So that just my spidey sense went up and I was like, what is this? What are they talking about? Because they were both obsessed about it. So Clubhouse is an audio app. It's only right now available on Apple iOS phones.
Hmm.
But basically, it is like a live talk radio show 24/7, but there's so many different channels. So they call it different rooms that you can enter and listen to conversations or join in the conversation. So what sparked me with that was, hey, like I love podcasts. I love listening. I think I learn the most through audio, being able to listen. So I was super interested in how I'm gonna download it. And currently right now it's on beta. So you have to get an invite from someone who's already in the Clubhouse, which I know it sounds like a little extra, but from from Clubhouse's explanation is they're carefully trying to scale. And so by doing that, it's by invitation only. Obviously, we all know in the marketing perspective, like it does create FOMO. It
Mm-hmm.
creates this sense of um, curiosity and excitement of exclusivity. And I was lucky enough to get an invitation actually by someone I think I may have known her a really long time ago, but she saw my name pop up on the waiting list and she accepted me
Oh,
in.
cool. That's nice. Well, and just to be
Yeah.
clear, this is not sponsored by Clubhouse. We are not,
Mm-mm.
we're in no way
No,
trying to push everyone on it. I'm more so
no.
interested in the your approach to testing out new technologies in your job search and
Yeah.
finding new ways to get yourself out there, to connect with professionals, to put yourself into the context of what other people are doing. And I think that's such a big piece of it. Like, we say you should be active on LinkedIn, but we don't always say
Mm-hmm.
why. And the reason is because that's where the conversations are happening that lead
Mm-hmm.
to referrals, that lead to hiring. Why should you be involved in Clubhouse? Well, I'm sure there's plenty of different reasons. But again, it's the exposure to people, to ideas. It's the same way, back when we could leave the house. It was the same way as when I would go to American Marketing Association events, and I was so nervous I wouldn't talk to people. I would just kind of be there. But the name, my face, my whatever, like people start to pick up on when you're a regular. And when you're a regular, you can start to, eventually become part of those conversations, become part of those communities. And I
Mm-hmm.
think with everything in the job search, it is this ongoing attempt to be part of your industry or your field or your community, right? If you're a scientist out in the woods doing science, no one's going to know about it, right? But if you're a scientist
Mm-hmm.
part of the scientific community, sharing notes, writing white papers, and
Yeah.
engaging, you'll actually contribute to the body of work. And the same thing with all of our careers. So what are some of maybe the things that you've learned or the connections you've made that have stood out as you've been exploring this like new territory?
So for LinkedIn, you can take your time and creating a post and come up with the words on a on for your post. Um, but on Clubhouse, it's live, so you have to get the courage to raise your hand to speak in front of an public speaking in front. They call it the stage. It could be 5 people in a room. It could be 100 people in the room, and sharing your thoughts. That has been very interesting, but in a way where it's giving me practice to public speak, but it also gives new people access to who I am personally. And I think that is what is very cool about this app, is that you can instantly find out a person's personality and their thoughts just all by the sound of their voice. And I think that has been a really quick networking way of people to get to know you very quickly, because sometimes posts on any platform may take time for people to really start to engage with you. First they'll like you, then they'll do maybe a comment here and there, but on Clubhouse, your voice and sharing it once you get on stage and speak, it could be instant and making that connection with new people.
Absolutely. And that's the
So I find
thing,
that
right?
very fascinating.
Yeah, and you
Hmm.
juxtapose that with someone sending a really long message on LinkedIn through InMail. Like, what's going to be
Yes.
more attractive to other people to engage with? And a lot of the job search is just learning how to communicate properly and
Hmm.
learning how to be present with other professionals without being anxious and nervous. And anything that we can do to overcome those barriers and get out there more, I think is beneficial. So I appreciate you kind of laying that all out for folks who are interested in maybe trying out different things. And there's other apps out there
Hmm.
like Lunch Club, if anyone's ever heard of that, like where it automatically pairs you up with professionals for one-on-one chats and things along those lines. So there's plenty of different things out there. Discord is really trying to connect people via chat and different things like that with job boards and opportunities. But
Yeah.
networking in general is so
Yeah.
essential. 80% of jobs are found through networking. And I think you're a testament, like the fact that we're on this podcast right now when 3 weeks ago we didn't know who each other were. I think that
No.
it's a testament to how this sort of can all continue to sort of create a flywheel of momentum.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Once you start putting yourself out there
it
and having
definitely
the
comes around.
courage.
Yeah. And so
Yeah.
when you're doing all this stuff though, I think one of the things that freaks people out is that they get nervous and they get overwhelmed. And then
Yeah.
sometimes the burnout starts to creep in and get to them. So how are you handling that side of things when it comes to putting yourself out there, joining these communities and creating content and everything like that?
I still get butterflies. I still have a little voice that tells me, "What are you saying? You don't what We are not worthy to say that." But um, I want a different outcome. So if I want 2021 to be different than 2020, I need to push down all of those fears and small talks and and just go for it. And I think where funnily enough, I feel like where I feel the most centered is when I can speak authentically. And I think that's why Clubhouse was such a great fit for me, is because I'm working on my journaling and my writing and my posting. But when I'm talking to people and really connecting with the topic or the person or the moderator, I feel so much more comfortable. And that's, you just have to find what makes you feel the most alive and the best. And that was just Clubhouse for me. But I think that people should explore and find out where are they going to find their best platform during this job search, navigating it through these very interesting times.
Yeah, and it really is, finding what works for you. And that again brings us
Hmm.
back to the experts, all the experts are out there saying you have to do this, or here's the 3-step approach, or here's the thing. And by all means, test things out. I'm not saying,
Yes.
ignore these things. I'm just saying none of these people know what's right for you. Even me as a coach, I have
Yeah.
no idea what's right for you until we have talked at length and I've almost let you come up with some sort of solution, right? I'm more about pulling those solutions out of people than placing them on top of people. And most of the time folks are out there looking for a single answer. I just want to know the
Mm-hmm.
one thing. I got an email today. Someone goes, I've applied to 1,000 jobs, probably overstating, but I've applied to 1,000 jobs. Um, and I haven't gotten anything. I go, I can't believe, in my head, I go, I can't believe you've gotten to 1,000 applications with the same result and not thought to yourself, I should probably do something different.
Something
Right.
different.
Right. Like if I was
Yeah.
out there and I just kept hitting my head against a light post, I'd be like, wow, this kind of hurts. I should stop. Right. And
Yeah.
for some
Yeah.
reason, we don't do that because the marketing or the fear or the overwhelm or whatever it might be. And so I said to this person, I go, well, have you networked at all? And they go, I have 300 connections on LinkedIn. What else do I need to do? And I go, this is going to be a long conversation, but it just kind of shows, and I don't want to hate on this person. I just want to point out the overwhelm that hits people, right? Because this person also reached out to me a year ago and asked the exact same question and clearly hasn't done
Mm.
anything different in the last year.
Yeah.
And it just makes me go, okay, why have they not done anything different? Number one. But number two, there are so many different things to do. There are so many ways to do the job search, so many ways to live your life, so many
Yeah.
ways to do all these things that we shouldn't ever feel like there isn't like a next step. There is always a next step.
Yeah. And it goes back to going back to the inventory of what makes you you, and really trying to find out, where do I spark? Where do people gravitate towards me? If I am really good about um, collecting data and sharing with people because I can simplify it, then that should probably be a post that you put out there. Or, do you like talking to people? Do you want to get to know them? Leave a voicemail to maybe a new connection or a connection that you haven't talked to in a long time. I love the voicemail part on LinkedIn. Obviously, you can tell I love audio. I love
Mm-hmm.
getting the energy back and forth, but you just have to find what what are you going to get the most out of yourself and the engagement back to you.
That's awesome. Yeah, because it really is leaning into what is right for you.
Hmm.
I think someone a year or two ago, I was talking to them and they're like, have you written a book? And I go, no, I've not written a book. Well, you should. You should write a book. Why haven't you written a book yet? I'm like, because I don't write ever. I never write anything except in my journal, and I'm not publishing my journal. like, I'm like, have you written a book? Yes, I've written 5. Well, good for you. That seems to
See,
be your
that's
thing.
what they tend to do, is these experts, because it worked for them, they're going to sell it to you. And that's totally fine because it may work for you,
Yeah,
but you have to test it out. You have, and let it go if it doesn't work out, and don't beat yourself up because it didn't get the the results that you thought you were going to get.
right, right.
Just
It's
move on.
100%. And so, if you
Yeah.
were to go back a year, this is what I'm
Mm,
really curious about. If you were to go back a year and talk to yourself,
yeah.
would you do anything different, or would you allow things to just evolve at the way and the pace they did?
Well, I this is considering that I still had a job.
Oh no, after,
Yeah. Or
right after the
right after
layoffs.
last year, what would I do different? That's really hard, because I think to where I am right now, it's a it's a it's been a long journey, like been almost 8 to 9 months, and I don't know if I would change anything. Would I tell myself something that maybe would spark something different? I don't know. I think for me, it's just been a discovery. And I feel like if I have to do all those crummy steps to get where I am right now, um, in order to live in this moment of being more consistent with my posts, um, and putting myself out there in Clubhouse and hosting rooms and talking to people. Um, I don't know if I would change anything because it's what's got me to be here today.
Yeah.
I had to get through all those uncomfortable moments.
I appreciate you sharing that, because I do think that, this was a conversation I had over the weekend with someone, but you have all these parents who are trying to prevent their kids from making the same mistakes as them. And you have,
Yes.
society saying we should learn our lessons from the past. And I always
Yeah.
think about that and I go, you really don't know something unless you've gone through it yourself. And I think about all the lessons that people tried to save me from. And I'm like, I
Hmm.
wish first of all, it usually doesn't work because people just go and do whatever they want to do anyway. But I'm always like, if I had just listened to that person and not done the thing that put me in the tough spot, that gave me the learning, lesson, I never would have
Hmm.
actually understood it. I would have just avoided it out of fear. And I feel like that is a
Yes.
really, really sort of sad lesson, or like sad thing that we try and do to people, where we try and take away people's learnings. We try and be like, well, here's
Yeah.
the shortcut, here's the quick fix, here's the thing that is going to help you, when maybe the long fix, maybe the long stumble is what people
Mhm.
need. They need 6 months or a year or 10 years of fumbling in order to actually become someone who understands that lesson. I think there's some quote somewhere. It says, lessons will continue being taught to you until you've learned them, or something along those
Mm.
lines. And I always like that, because I'm like,
It will always show up. It will
I'm
always
a
come up.
slow learner. I'm a slow learner. I need a lot of repetition and a lot of failure.
I'm a I'm a learner by mistake too. I I'm okay to admit that. Even, professionally sometimes you're not gonna make the right decision sometimes, you're not gonna do the right thing. But once learn that it didn't turn out right, I definitely will put it in my memory bank and say, okay, that didn't work. Let's do something else again.
Yeah, I'm exactly the same way. I love that. So it's also why I look up to people like the Stoics. It's just a bunch of messed up people journaling about trying to be better. It's not like a deity or anything like that. Um, so, when it comes to networking, I'd love to just get
Yeah.
one more thought from you on, what is maybe the biggest thing you've picked up or learned
Mm.
about networking with people, now that you're in this new routine and you're following this execution path that you're on.
I think that we're all just humans. So just to say a simple hello and to say, hey, that what you said on Clubhouse or what I read on LinkedIn, that resonated with me. And this is the reason why. I think that is super valuable when it's not about, hey, how can you help me? It's more like, hey, you you did something, you said something that landed on me, and I just want to say thank you. And wherever it leads to, and not invest in, well, I hope that that person calls me back because then I'm going to do this and this and that. I'm definitely, I know I used to be in that way where I'm like, oh, if I do this, it's going to turn out this way. But I've taken that down so much where I'm like, I'm just going to share my thoughts, and hopefully if it resonates with you, let's continue this conversation. I think that's what networking is how do you start a conversation, get the courage to start a conversation, how do you start it, and continuing to have authentic conversation, not like you're trying to get something from them. It's just more so, I'm really curious about you
I love
because
that.
you put yourself out there.
Curiosity is the way to go, for sure. And if people are curious about where to find more about you, where should they go?
They can go on my LinkedIn profile under Valerie Mecki, or they can go to my blog that I started during the pandemic. I launched a blog Thank you. I launched the blog supporting women who are navigating a job search, who wants to level up in their career or start a side hustle or a small business. All of those things I've done before and checked off before. So the name of the blog is Oh Hello Work Life, because it could be a little surprising sometimes.
I love it. Definitely go check her out on LinkedIn and her blog. And Valerie, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Martin. Thank you so much. So glad that we met.
Thanks so much for stopping by this episode of the Career Therapy Podcast. It's been a pleasure having you. And if you're curious about what we do here at Career Therapy, head on over to www.careertherapy.com to see all of our coaching options, resources, and links to other things we got going on. If you would like to share your story on this podcast, something that you've gone through, a transition you've experienced in your career, whether it's getting a job after college or going through a layoff or getting back into the workforce after raising your family, we would love to hear from you. Head over to linkedin.com/in/Martin McGovern and shoot me a DM. Let me know what's going on, and I'd really like to share your story with the world. What we're trying to do here is really normalize the emotional side of the job search because we all go through it. We all have tough times in our careers, and sharing these stories really helps people feel less alone and feel more empowered to take their career back into their own hands and make something of it. So thank you again for stopping by. If you'd like to leave a like or a comment, subscribe or share, or leave us a review on iTunes and I think maybe even Spotify, we'd really appreciate it. Best of luck to you in all of your career endeavors, and I'll see you on the next episode. Cheers.